Dr. Andrew Thomas worked as a mission specialist on board the shuttle Endeavour and helped deploy a satellite during the flight. The Institution of Engineers is now sponsoring Dr. Thomas, a former engineering graduate, on a tour of Australia. At Newcastle University today, Dr. Thomas said that apart from the feeling of being weightless, the most spectacular thing about his 10 days in space was the view, the sight of Australia creating a lasting impression.
It's a beautiful sight. It's very, very characteristic and very noticeable because it's got these red inland regions. And as soon as you come across from the west, you see the blue ocean and the stark contrast with the red deserts. So even if you don't know where you are and you see this, you know immediately where you are. It's Australia.
Dr. Thomas expects space travel and research to take huge steps forward over the next 30 years, predicting future missions to Mars and further visits to the Moon.
We will see a return to the Moon and probably a permanent habitation there.
He says Australia has the opportunity to become a world player in the field of space travel.
It's got the technological infrastructure, the resources, the industrial base to do that kind of thing. It's got a geography that is good for potential launch sites, and it would be something that would benefit the country enormously.
Residents opposed to the airport's upgrade gathered today to celebrate what they see as a win over Wyong Shire Council. They were concerned that council plans to extend the runway, allowing bigger planes and more frequent services, would devalue their houses. They enlisted the help of local member Paul Crittenden, who introduced a private members bill. The bill effectively ensures future development will be subject to independent noise studies.
If the council wish, they can apply to the Minister for Urban Affairs and Planning, Craig Knowles, to extend the runway to 1,800 metres, in which case a transparent and open process will be undertaken and there will be a completely new noise study.
The Minister met face-to-face with concerned residents today, telling them they'll be consulted should plans for the airport go back on the drawing board.
I think you can tell by the residents that are here today that they're happy with the results. They got what they asked for, a chance to have a real say with a transparent process and an independent assessment.
A spokesman for Wyong Shire Council says council is now considering its position on any future airport upgrade. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Barbara has been parting cards and telling stories for 22 years, using these pictures of swords and dragons to predict the future. She's one of 20 clairvoyants at the Psychic Expo, and she's in popular demand according to organisers.
I think people are generally disenchanted with life as it is and has always been, and they're looking for a newer, better, more workable reality.
The spiritual supermarket offers everything from crystal healing to aura vision, where a photograph reveals what the eye can't see. The 6-day expo draws all kinds of people. Some even admit to being a bit strange.
Weird? Well, perhaps we're a little weird too. I mean, if you look over and you look at my wife, she's got her face painted, she's got a bird's nest in her hair and a little dove on top. I'd perhaps admit that's not terribly normal.
Normal or not, they'll offer plenty of advice for the future.
Don't think too much and you have a great potential for money to come in.
Sounds all right to me. Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
Sixteen-year-old Jason Moon showed no signs of nerves today as he started the third round at even par and 4 shots ahead of Western Australian Simon Lacey. The Sydney sider parred the first before a mini collapse left him at 5 over par for the day in the tournament. But his only real challenger, 17-year-old Lacey, couldn't take advantage of his rival's misfortune, firing a 6 over 78 to drop back a further shot. Sydney's Gloria Park has rejoined Queenslander Tamara Johns at the top of the women's table. They're deadlocked at 13 over par after 3 rounds, and with just 18 holes to go, tomorrow should provide a spectacular finale to the Jack Newton International Junior Classic. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Council officers were patrolling the mall today on the lookout for litterbugs. The Clean City 1997 program aims to encourage people to drop their rubbish and cigarette butts in the bin and not on the ground.
We're letting the people know we are around, our officers are around to reassure people that they are being watched, not by Big Brother, but Little Brother, and the people of Newcastle have got the opportunity to keep their place clean, and we're here just to give them a little bit of a reminder.
6 litter hotspots have been targeted, including the CBD and the city's gateways. Formal warnings will be given for the first 6 weeks to anyone with lax rubbish bin habits, but following that, anyone caught not doing the right thing will be slapped with a $200 on-the-spot fine.
They do it just out of habit, and they just don't think. When you see people do it, I've said to people, now what'd you do that for? Oh, I just didn't realise. They'll go and pick it up.
Members of the public will also be able to dob in anyone they catch littering by reporting them via Litter Watch cards. Simone Cobb, NBN News.
The headlines screamed defections, with the Knights one of 2 clubs set to jump onto the Super League bandwagon. But the club says nothing could be further from the truth.
I've actually had a phone call this morning from the Telegraph paper basically apologising for that article. I think that was a knee-jerk reaction on their part. It may have been slanted reporting, but generally speaking that's not the case at all. You know, we've obviously indicated our support to the ARL, and that will be the case.
That loyalty was pledged at a special meeting of ARL clubs last night, with all agreeing to play in a 12-team competition if necessary. That set the scene for a rugby league showdown in Newcastle as the Knights and Mariners try to woo fans and sponsors.
And I think you have to be concerned as to what damage that may do to the game, and in particular in Newcastle, whether or not the town can afford or can accept to support 2 teams remains to be seen.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Reducing air pollution is a costly business. Air quality problems are changing every day, forcing scientists to continually modify their solutions. Professor Robert Tapscott from the University of New Mexico addressed an air quality seminar in Newcastle today, warning about changes in the near future.
Manufacturers are going to have to be concerned about what type of refrigerants they use in their refrigeration processes. Also, home users are going to have to be worried about what type of refrigeration they put in their car.
Professor Tapscott says car manufacturers in America have already begun phasing out old air conditioning agents, costing users a lot more money.
In the United States, for example, it's probably going to cost you 10 times what it used to have your car air conditioner serviced. They have to put in new valves, new gaskets, and new refrigerant.
Professor Tapscott says people should be prepared for the regulation increase.
I'd have to say the biggest hurdles is that people don't know what's coming up around the corner. If there's any rule you want to use is that environmental regulations will always increase.
Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
After 18 months of bombshells, the Hunter Mariners dropped another today, inviting the Newcastle Knights to merge under the Super League banner.
Well, I thought we'd put it out on the table and run from there. I'm a super optimist in everything, and it's up to the Knights now to see if they'd like to pick this ball up.
There are no definite plans for a merger, with players, coach and ground all under consideration if the clubs ever get to the bargaining table. But the Newcastle Knights have pledged allegiance to the Australian Rugby League, although they have until Friday to officially join the competition.
If you look at the teams that have competed with it, that are loyal to the ARL, and you look at those teams that ended up in the final 8 this year, obviously it would indicate to you that the premier competition next year is going to be the ARL one.
The likelihood of the Knights joining the ARL has increased with the announcement Optus will help to pay Newcastle's debts. The Mariners remained non-committal on whether they would be willing to inherit the Knights' financial problems, but they would like some of their players.
I'd be the same as any other coach. I want the best players in my team.
We certainly aren't going to lie down and just take any individual poaching of those players while they're contracted to the Knights.
Well, if there's a merger between the Knights and the Mariners, now I was talking to Mark Sargent and Robbie McCormick about it the other night. Now the emotion, everything's gone out of it. If there was a merge, I would. I'd play in a Newcastle team.
After more than a year of controversy, the only certainty coming out of today's announcement is that there'll be a lot more surprises before the kick-off for next season. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
This resin mobile took Julie Squires months to create. Today she arrived to find half of it smashed in pieces.
Basically I'm numb. Yeah, very numb.
It's one of 18 works wrecked by vandals at Newcastle's Neo Gallery last night. A collection of erotic artworks, the exhibition features revealing sculptures and paintings. The vandals broke into a side room, stealing paints and a knife before ripping into the artwork.
I just looked at the floor and I just stood there and said something very loudly and looked around and just found that everything has been systematically destroyed.
Adding to the insult, the vandals sprayed the walls with graffiti condemning the sexual tone of the exhibition. Police inspected the damage this morning, but Mr Ritchie says they're still looking for answers.
We don't have a clue. We've been sitting here all day making conjectures and stuff like that, trying to figure out who it would be.
Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
The Breakers last season was a bit like their coach's drive at the Merriweather Pro-Am today. Initial promise, but a wayward ending. John Cosmina just hopes this season the team mimics his putting game, starting with Adelaide City tomorrow night at Breakers Stadium. But it's been a less than ideal preparation with doubts over the starting 11.
If the Buds are prepared to transfer the players to us subject to special conditions that we can place on the transfer form subject to the result of the tribunal, which a date is yet to be set for, then they'll be available, Liam Maguire and Liam Baker.
The Breakers have also been hampered by injuries, with 2 players taking the field well short of full fitness.
Probably Ironside's got a bit of a niggly hamstring, and Troy Halpin strained his foot yesterday morning at training, although from what I understand from his flatmate, he's just gone down to Cardiff driving range to have a few practice hits, so his foot's not too bad. So if he turns up tomorrow and unable to play, he's going to be in big trouble.
The rest of the team could also be in trouble if they repeat the concentration lapses made in last year's games against City.
Both times we played them at Breakers, certainly in the first game we should have won. The second one we played them off the park for 40 minutes till we lost the man due to a send-off.
Cosmina says the team has matured since then. They're what he describes as naive play, hardened by a year in a national competition. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Research shows that 50% of a person's ability to learn is developed in the first 4 years of life. So what these young children do in the home and the playground can have a real effect on them in later life. A new program called The Early World of Learning, designed to help parents educate their children, has now been released in Australia.
Well, it's a series of books and puzzles that are designed for parents to read with their children. It covers all the developmental areas, all the things that a child has to learn before they start school.
The program was launched in Sydney last year and is now available to homes and preschools throughout the Central Coast. It encourages parents to read to their children from the time they are newborn babies and also to teach them to read as early as possible.
Sitting the young child on your lap, reading to the child, there is emotional content, that's very important. Also discussing the story, allowing the child to explore their own imagination.
It's an idea workers at the Kincumber Kids Factory preschool near Gosford have already embraced.
The reading starts, in our nursery. I mean, whether it be, a formal discussion or just informally one-to-one, but it's a way of building a relationship with the children.
Emma Ossian, NBN News. The federally funded project will see a heavily used section of the Pacific Highway at Ourimbah replaced with an interchange and dual carriageway freeway. The interchange will connect the freeway to Ourimbah and surrounding areas. The work will allow motorists to bypass the 60 km/h stretch of road leading to the Ourimbah roundabout, effectively completing the missing link of the F3 freeway. Work on Stage 1 is well underway, involving the construction of 4 sets of twin bridges, local road deviations and earthworks. The new service will stretch for 3.5 kilometres and should be open to traffic by midway through 1998. Emma Ossian, NBN News.
Idyllic conditions for the start of the representative cricket season in Newcastle, the touring Tasmanians winning the toss and electing to bat. In the middle, opener Jamie Cox set about making it the right decision after laying the foundations with ones and twos in the first few overs. The seasoned Sheffield Shield batsman built on his personal tally with consecutive fours off Peter March. From there it was a full-scale attack. Cox shot down another wayward delivery to keep the score ticking before smashing another boundary in the 17th over to knock up the team's 50 in just over an hour. It was slow going for Tassie's other opener Dean Hills, but a change of bat was all that was needed. He returned to the crease with a new willow to send Reece Soper to the fence. And at drinks, the visitors were doing it well at none for 73. 90 minutes into the innings, Cox brought up his 50 off just 67 balls. The tourists raced towards a big total with a combination of brute strength and the odd touch of finesse before a wicket just before lunch left Tasmania at 1 for 133. The Tigers continued to thump away in the afternoon session. Hills and DiVenuto combined in style before the partnership was broken by local captain Steve Story. 2 for 228, Hills was defiant, climbing his way into the 90s, then after 70 overs at the crease, his ton. He was dismissed for 106, but the visitors are well in control with 2 days play remaining. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
The parcel of land has been a bone of contention between sand mining company ACI and Port Stephens Council. The land holds 500,000 tonnes of precious silica sand used in the manufacture of clear glass. But there was concern that mining the area would devastate a population of 100 koalas. The court's decision effectively locks up the southern dune of the peninsula.
It's got to be a balance between those two resources, koalas versus glass, and we thought all along that we had done an even-handed approach to the rezoning.
But ACI has not been locked out of the peninsula altogether. The company still has permission to mine the North Dune, which contains 1.2 million tonnes of silica. Council says a careful balance has been struck, catering to both business and environmental concerns. Mr Warren says he's not expecting ACI to take the case any further.
I would hope that, that the decision of the court in this matter has put the matter to rest, especially on the southern dune.
ACI could not be contacted today for comment.
The professional golfers at the Branxton Pro-Am may have stolen most of the attention, but the 2-day event also delivered a classic showdown between 2 of the up-and-coming talents in the amateur ranks. Belmont's Adele Bannerman and Dale Linnetson finished the event locked on 155 to share the amateur trophy.
Enemies on the course, but always friends off the course. So, yeah, we get along really well.
It was back to practice today for Bannerman, New South Wales #1 ranked amateur, doing what she does 6 hours a day, sometimes 7 days a week. It's that commitment which many people think will pay off in the long term as she moves towards professional status. But in the short term, the focus is on next month's Australian Open.
Working on a few little swing changes, trying to strengthen it up and doing a fair bit on my short game. I'm hoping that's going to pull me through.
Hoping to add her name to another leaderboard, Bannerman will leave for the Open on the 4th of November. They're two of the hottest young boxers in the country. After a bruising effort at the Australian titles, the duo returned to the ring in Newcastle this afternoon for another sparring session. Pittman won gold in his division with a unanimous points decision, while Adam was runner-up in the 41.5 kilogram class, losing 3-2 on points. Both boxers have a real chance of fighting for Australia in Sydney 2000, but the biggest obstacle now is competition. Australia boasts few fighters. The obvious step now is overseas.
Yeah, well, we heard last night from officials that the juniors were getting fights in Cuba, England and the Philippines.
Confirmation of the international bouts is expected to be known towards the end of the year.
The Pacific Highway drew to a standstill as emergency services rushed to the accident site. Just before 10 o'clock, the driver of a white utility tried to overtake a northbound truck 10 kilometres north of Raymond Terrace. He ploughed into an oncoming sedan, destroying the driver's side of the car.
The car came out straight into our line and like it's a straight road.
The 69-year-old driver of the Daihatsu was travelling with his wife to their daughter's wedding in Canberra. He took the brunt of the impact with head, chest and leg injuries, while his wife suffered minor chest pain. They were both taken to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital.
After hitting the oncoming car, police believe the driver of the ute pulled in sharply before slamming into the back of the truck.
He was taken to the John Hunter Hospital with a fractured ankle. Vanessa Spark, NBN News. These agricultural experts head some of the best colleges in the Philippines. Now they're looking for other institutions for help. They're spending the week at Tocal College learning about a practical approach to rural education.
We've learned a lot, especially with respect to how the school is being managed. Its system of getting coordination or linkages with the industry.
The scheme is supported by the Australian Agency for Industrial Development. It aims to reduce the number of colleges in the Philippines while improving the quality of teaching there.
Which has basically got too many schools and colleges and universities teaching agricultural science with a research focus and not enough teaching small business practice.
The group will take their tips from Tocal back to the Philippines on Saturday.